In the previous video lessons, we introduced the very important concept of non-harmonic tones. We have seen that these non-harmonic tones are very important because they allow us to create a melody without using only the notes of a chord. So, for example, if we have a C major chord, for example, if we are in the C major key, and so we use the first degree, the chord built on the first degree, so the C major chord, the three notes which are part of this chord are C, E, and G, and these are called the chord tones. But of course, if we only use these three chord tones, we can only compose a melody made up of only arpeggios, so something like this. And so in this case, we are limited. We are very limited if we only use this kind of notes. So this is why we have to introduce the concept of the concept of non-harmonic tones, which are those notes that are not part of a chord, but however they sounds good. They still sounds good even if they are not part of the chord which we are playing. Okay, so the first kind of non-harmonic tones we have introduced are the passing tones. We have defined the passing tones as the notes which tied together two different chord tones of the same chord or of different chords. So, for example, if I have the C major chord and I'm still in the C major key, and I have these different chord tones, so the C and the E, for example, and I want to tie them together, I will use this note, which is a D note, which is of course a passing tone, because it ties these two chords on the C and the E. So, for example, I can play something like this. And so this is a chord tone, this other is a chord tone, and the D will be a passing tone. Okay, so however, we have already discussed, we have already talked about this aspect in depth. And today we are going to introduce a new concept, a new kind, we could say, of non-harmonic tones, which are the auxiliary tones. So to understand better the importance of the auxiliary tones, we have to say that the main feature of the passing tones, so the first kind of non-harmonic tones we introduced in the previous lesson, the main feature is that there is some linear situation. I mean that if I use the passing tones, I have a very linear situation in my melody. If I compose my melody using in that part of the melody, of course, the passing tones, I will have a linear situation, a linear feature. It gives the melody a feature, a linear feature. So why is this? This is because, of course, I only can go in one direction, because if I go from the C, which is a chord tone, to the D, which is a passing tone, I have to go in the same direction. I have to go on using the same direction. So I have to go to a note higher. I move up from the C to the D, and then of course I go to the E, because we have said that the passing tones are those notes who tied together to different notes, to different chord tones. So if we move from the C and we arrive on the D, of course we can only go up to the E. And this is why we have a very linear situation, because while we are using these passing tones, we only can go in one direction. Of course, when I arrive on the E note, of course I can go down to the D note and then back to the C, of course. But when I'm playing my passing tone, I have to follow the same direction that I have used from the beginning, of course. So this is the main feature of the passing tones. So we need to introduce a new kind of non-harmonic tones, which are of course the auxiliary tones, which give me some different property, which gives me some different feature, and so it allows me to give something new. So I can add something new, something more to my melody, and this is very important to achieve a greater variety. So let's see the definition of auxiliary tones, and of course then we are going to see them in practice, in depth, to analyze them, to understand them very well. So the auxiliary tones, which are also called neighboring tones or neighbor tones, are we can use the singular. An auxiliary tone is a non-harmonic tone that passes stepwise from a chord tone above or below it and then returns to the same chord tone, using of course the degrees of the scale. So this is definition. Now we have to go in depth and to see in practice what are the auxiliary tones. So for example, if I am as always, as usually in the C major tonality, I'm on the first degree, so I'm using the chord on the first degree, so the C major chord. I play this note, the C note, which of course is a chord tone. So I can move and I can go down. I can move to a note lower, because we have to move by step. Of course, we have said that the non-auxiliary tone is a non-harmonic tone that passes stepwise, so by step. So I have to move by step and go on the B, for example, and then I return to the C. So the first C note, of course, is a non-harmonic, is a chord tone. The B is an auxiliary tone, which passes stepwise from a chord tone from a chord tone below it, of course, because we are going to a lower note in this case, and then we return back. We return to the same chord tone. This is very important. I move from a chord tone, I go up or down, I move to a higher or a lower note by step, of course, and then of course I return to the same chord tone. So let's play it with a correct rhythm. So counting all the 4 beats in this way: 1, 2, 3, 4. So of course this is the first example we have to look at. But of course we can also use an auxiliary tones which passes stepwise from a chord tone above it. So instead of moving to a lower note from the C, I can move to a higher note And in this case, I will have this C, which is a chord tone, a D, which will be, of course, an auxiliary tone, and then I return to the same chord tone. So I can play also this example in this way: 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is very, very important, and the main aspect we have to highlight is that while in the case of a passing tone, while in the case of a passing tone, I can only go using one direction, only one direction. So, for example, if I move from the C to the D, then I go on to the E, so I'm using only one direction. I'm going to higher notes from the C. In the case of an auxiliary tone, I have a change of direction because I move from the C. I go, for example, to a higher note by step, of course. So I move up, and then I return to the same chord tone, so I'm moving down, I'm going down. So this is very important because we have to highlight this aspect, because there is a very different feature. We have two different features between these two different non-harmonic tones: the passing tones, of course, and the auxiliary tones. And this is a very important aspect because this allow us to have many tools and new tools to add, to use in composing our melody. Okay, so this is very okay. This is of course very, very important. However, the aspect we can highlight is that, of course, we can also change our chords. I mean that that when we return to the same chord tone, I mean to the same note we left, in that moment I can change the chord. So let's see this in practice, because of course very often when we talk, it looks like something quite difficult, but when we put into practice, it is very easy. It is much easier. It is much easier than only talking about. Okay, so let's try. For example, let's imagine to be in the C major key, as we usually do. So we now can use another chord. So we can use, for example, as usual, we're going to use first the first degree, the chord on the first degree, so the C major chord, and then we're going to use the F major chord, so the chord built on the fourth degree. Oh, okay, so let's see this. I'm using these chord tones, which is of course a note, a tone, which belongs to which is part of the C major chord. Then I move to a lower note, which is an auxiliary tone, of course. Then I return to the C, but while I'm returning to the C, I will change my chord, and I will play an F major chord. So in the second case, while in the first case, when I first play the C, this is a chord tone. This is a tone which belongs to, of course, to the C major chord. But when I return from the D to the C, this is a chord tone, and it belongs. It is part, we could say, of the F major chord. And this is quite important, because we can achieve a greater variety in this way, because we can use both. We can use I mean, we can use the auxiliary tones, both using the same chord, remaining on the same chord, but also changing chords. So and this is very important. So let's see another example. We can try this. I am on the 5th degree, so the G major chord, and then I go to the C major chord. So the G note, this is the first note I play, and this is a chord tone, of course. This is a chord tone of the G major chord. And then I move, I pass it stepwise. I go to the A, which is an auxiliary tone, and then I return back on the G. But in the same moment I play again the G, I will move and I will play a new chord. I will change the chord and I will play the C major chord. So in this case I will have this example, this musical situation. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So as we did before, as we did in the previous example, when I return to the chord tone from the neighboring tone, from the auxiliary tone, I change the chord. So the note on which I return will be the chord tone of a different chord than the first chord, of course. But of course we could have something different, also changing chords. I mean, we can in these two examples we did this. We changed the chord. We changed the chord in the same moment we were returning to the chord tone, to the first note, to the first note of the example. For example, in the previous example, I was playing the G, which is a chord tone, then the A, an auxiliary tone, and then when at the same time, exactly at the same time I'm returning to the G, I can change chord. I can play another chord, but I can do something different. I will do this. I will play my chord tone, the first chord tone, then I move to auxiliary tone, then I return to the chord tone, to the first chord tone, which is still a chord tone which belongs to the first chord, and then I will move to another tone. And in that moment, I will change chord. So the last note which belongs to a new chord will be the chord tone of a new chord. Okay, let's see this in practice. For example, if I have the G major chord, which is a 5th degree of the C major key, I can do this. I can play the chord tone, which is the D, which is a chord tone. Then I move to the E, sorry, which is an auxiliary tone. Then I return to the same chord tone, and then I move to another note, to the C, for example. And in this moment, only in this moment, I will change the chord. So while in the example before, as I said before, we were changing our chords in the same moment, at the same time, when we were returning to the same chord tone, to the first chord tone. In this case, I am changing the chord after I am arrived on the chord. I have returned to the first chord tone, and then only after this, only after I've been returned, I returned to the first chord tone, I move to a new note and I change my chord. So this example will we can play this example, of course, in this way: 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. So it is very important that we understand that these two aspects, these two main aspects. So the first of all, the introduction of a new kind of non-harmonic tone, so an auxiliary tone, and the second aspect, the second concept, that is the fact that we can change the chord, we can change chords depending on what we want, on which situation we are. We can have many different situations. We can achieve a greater variety.